All right, we are back with more NFL coverage, and in this one, we have the Week 7 recaps. And to get straight into it, started off with a pretty weird Thursday night football game because for this to be between two old men, and Aaron Rodgers said this shit himself, this actually ended up being one of the better Thursday night matches of the season between the Steelers and the Bengals here. Now, no, at this time on Thursday night, I didn't watch all of this game. I was put into it, honestly, right after one of the pivotal plays happened. Essentially, by this point, the Steelers started pretty well, honestly, with a 10-0 lead. And then you had one touchdown from the Bengals. I think Ja'Marr Chase scored that, followed by back-to-back drives for the Steelers that ended in picks. And one resulted in a T. Higgins touchdown, while the other one took us right into the specific point at which I started watching this game. And from the very onset, from at least what I saw, they were just getting Ja'Marr Chase active early and often. And I think that's all that the Bengals fans were asking for. Matter of fact, that is essentially what the theme of this game was. Ja'Marr Chase was always fucking open. Whether it was the Bengals scheming plays for him to get open, or whether it was the Steelers defense just truly not even giving a fuck about the fact that Ja'Marr Chase was out there at all. You're not even getting as physical with him as you should be. You're getting beaten consistently by him, giving him all the space in the world to operate with. It was just bad for that Steelers defense. But this was just the mere beginning of it. And it got worse when Joey Porter Jr. on this drive just found the living shit out of T. Higgins on a DPI to move them even further into field goal range. Eventually, Evan McPherson was able to get a 49-yard field goal in to give the Bengals the 17-10 lead heading into the second half. And the Steelers are lucky as hell, too, that they managed to hold them to just a field goal at this third quarter possession that the Bengals started out with. Like, they got incredibly lucky here. Because they were churning. They did everything they needed to do. They took damn near half of the quarter away with 7 minutes and 5 seconds off the clock. And in cases, they were actually able to establish the run. A team in the Bengals who had been struggling to impose their will on the ground as a unit for the past 3 years, consistently being one of the worst teams in the NFL when it comes to their rushing attack. We're actually having Chase Brown especially put together quite a fucking night there. Yet, as they drove closer and closer into Steelers territory, it would be Joe Flacco putting up a quarterback sneak to convert a 4th and 1 to get them even closer. The Steelers would do a great job of locking them up on this red zone possession. This was a poorly timed throw by Joe Flacco here. For example, T. Higgins was kind of going to like the corner of the end zone. And Jalen Ramsey, man, that's just, in that situation, you can't test him like that. He's going to be able to deflect that pass more often than not. That's exactly what would happen. And then, tough. While they were stopped in that respect, they would manage to still kick a 23-yard field goal to give themselves a 20-10 lead. And then the Steelers just got a flurry of loud responses. Not only did you have Jaylen Warren kind of match the intensity on the ground for them, getting a fucking 24-yard run here, but you also have Roman Wilson. For one of the few catches that this man had the gall to go up with what looked like a fucking hurdle and then a karate kick into a fucking spin move to extend the damn play, get the first down conversion, and then some. With a little bit of extra sauce. I don't know what the hell got into his mind at that point or what possessed him to straight up karate kick a motherfucker. But here we are. It's 2025, I guess. Nevertheless, Aaron Rodgers on third and incredibly long following a negative play to Darnell Washington Jr., who was also getting a little more involved in this game. Just fired one right over the seam as both deep guys just dropped down into the middle of the field, leaving the back end wide open. Pat Freiermuth, it was in the seam easily, and it ended up being just a complete money play for a touchdown to make this a 20-17 ball game. Then it just continued to heat up from there. They mentioned around this point, after a deep catch from none other than Andre Oshivas for 37 yards on third down, Ja'Marr Chase continued to get fed, and they put up a graphic stating that he was the 5th receiver all time to reach at least 6,000 receiving yards before their 70th NFL game. And he still had a little bit of time to spare in that regard. So, again, he's consistently proven to be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL since entering the league, and that just kind of adds to the legacy that he is at least starting to build as a young player here. Like, it's incredible stuff. As great as Ja'Marr Chase is, though, it would be the former Seahawk and Noah Fant to get a nice little read from Joe Flacco for a 5-yard touchdown. The Steelers would not waste any time responding at all, with Jaylen Warren just legitimately posing like a fucking bowling ball. This is legitimately what the man does. And just gashing the defense for a 37-yard pop. Then you had Freiermuth get a few catches together before Aaron Rodgers would take much better advantage of Darnell Washington here than he had in some cases. Because, like, earlier in this, like, there were a few just massive overthrows to Darnell Washington's direction by Rodgers. And it's like, yes, Darnell Washington is that damn tall, but he's not even going to be able to come down with some of these. This one was thrown right at his chest from 2 yards out. There was no way he was missing that. And it ended up being a touchdown catch. He added a fitting celebration of this shit after the play, which, again, it makes sense for him. And I would understand it best from his situation because, after all, that is his listed height. So it makes enough sense to me. The Steelers would kind of get a good defensive response, understanding what they just pulled off here. But it would take a little bit. They damn near bent completely. Noah Fant got a fucking 25-yard catch, and then again, Ja'Marr Chase was just consistently a thorn in their side, and yet they were still out here thinking they could play off on him. They were still out here not even trying to double team the man. Just short route after short route after short route being taken for extra yardage after the catch to pick up first downs or get them in manageable third down situations. That was the case. And it was just on fucking crack at this point. But for all the madness that he had been pulling off at this point, he managed to drop one. And Joe Flacco, they continued talking about it. He had a fitting reaction to it. It's like, damn, at that point, he was on pace for setting franchise records for targets and catches in a game by a wide receiver. And yet, the easiest catch of the night just sees you not even come down with it at all. Like, that's incredibly shocking. But the damn goal is to get you the ball. They could not get over it to save their lives, but I understand it. Hey, even with that kind of lucky bailout, given what Chase would do, the Bengals would still get on the board with an Evan McPherson field goal. And from there, both teams just punted before some bullshit gave way. Because we are dealing with the Bengals defense here. You knew at some point, sooner rather than later in this game, they were going to show you exactly why they were as bad as they have been for the past couple of seasons. Because it did help them that the Steelers were pushed back a few yards following a penalty, and it was already second down at that point. And yet these niggas proceed to let Pat Freiermuth work the seam again, get over the top of the defense, and catch a defender out of position completely to where he whiffs on the tackle following the Freiermuth catch. Then he's able to just run roughshod down the field the rest of the way with nothing but a field of green in front of him, without any defender even surrounding him good enough to make a play. And just like that, in one play, you give up a 68-yard touchdown catch to the man who had been struggling all season to even get targets prior to this game. It's just another absolutely embarrassing display from, again, this shitty defense. This is not rocket science. But the Steelers, even with them having a seemingly better defense on paper, have also had their fair share of struggles this season. And they would do their offense, despite Aaron Rodgers putting together a vintage drive here, they would not do them any favors. They allowed the Bengals to bleed the hell out of the clock. They took full advantage of the 2-minute warning. They took full advantage of, again, the lack of accountability to actually put bodies on Ja'Marr Chase at all. The man literally had multiple 15-yard catches off of just short plays in the first two of them alone. But, hey, what do they say all the time? You're so focused on Ja'Marr Chase now, and by that point, it's too late. Either way, you do that there, you always have the threat of T. Higgins killing you on the other side. And what do you know, T. Higgins, although I was looking down for a second from this, he managed to get a great and open catch for 28 yards. In fact, if he felt like scoring, he probably might have tried to. Like, the grass was all out in front of him. Nothing but open space. And yet he made the decision to slide. And that did wonders for them. Because the Steelers, from there, going to waste their last couple of timeouts, the Bengals, again, could continue to bleed clock. And before you know it, at the 11-second mark of the fourth quarter, Evan McPherson would kick in what may have eventually been the game-winning field goal at that point. If not for the fact that the Steelers were still able to get in enough range for an Aaron Rodgers Hail Mary attempt. The fact that he continues to set them up so well, even at his age, is absolutely crazy. And this was almost caught by DK Metcalf, if not for one of the rookies in DJ Ivy, I think, getting his hand over the ball and swatting it down to the ground. But still, from the release point, it got where it needed to be in the end zone. Like, that is insane. Like, you just can't question that man's ability to throw the football, bro. He still has got the shit. And again, both quarterbacks, whether you look at Joe Flacco and his contributions in this game or Aaron Rodgers and his contributions in the game, despite the 2 picks, man, they went toe-to-toe with each other. But at the end of the day, the Steelers, their defensive lapses consistently fell short and would lose 31-33 at the hands of Cincinnati. Their lead is also shortened in the AFC North following this game right here. To get into the numbers for the Bengals, you first have to look at Joe Flacco's contribution. Not only did the man have 31 of 47 passing, or for 342 yards and 3 touchdowns, the man also picked up what would prove to be a non-story here because the Steelers ended up scoring anyways, and then the Bengals responded. But at the time, that damn third down conversion with the man running a fucking read option. That's when I knew some bullshit was up. Because I'm looking at, I'm seeing, there's no way you're letting Joe Flacco do that to you, bro. You're biting on that? Like, he's not, I don't know. Either way, for Flacco, With his night here, Flacco became the 5th quarterback over the age of 40 to pass for more than 300 yards and 3 or more touchdowns in a game. Chase Brown, 11 rushes for 108 yards. And ironically enough, when it came to PPR guys, man, he actually lost yardage in the receiving game, interestingly enough. So, that's pretty interesting. Ja'Marr Chase, man, 16 receptions, Bengals franchise record, and 161 yards for a touchdown on 23 targets, which is also a Bengals franchise record, and a high in the league this year for any single game, for any single wide receiver. That was the game plan. He is always open. He's telling you he's always open. And what do you know? More often than not, he came down with a catch in this game. All Joe Flacco had to do was find him. That didn't prove to be too hard for him. T. Higgins had 6 receptions and 96 yards for a touchdown. Andre Voss had 3 receptions for 49 yards. And Noah Fant had 4 receptions for 44 yards. As for the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers also had 67.6% completion and 249 yards passing with 4 touchdown passes and 2 picks. Again, not bad game at all. The interceptions could certainly hurt, but man, they were still in it. He still delivered some pretty good sequences in this game for the team. So you can't be discontent with that. Jaylen Warren overall had a combined 20 total touches for 158 yards, including 127 on the ground on 7.9 yards per carry. And as for Pat Freiermuth, he had 5 receptions for 111 yards and 2 touchdown catches, while DK Metcalf had 3 receptions for 50 yards. How is it that Darnell Washington finished with 3 catches for 2 yards and a touchdown? I don't really know how to explain that one, but again, these things took place. And the Steelers, allow a few other teams in the AFC North now with this lead shortening up to potentially have a way back into it. All of a sudden, the Bengals, they got to keep it consistent, of course, but they go from a potential abject disaster to it's like, hold on, okay, maybe we do have a chance. Maybe we can sustain a bit more of a winning quality under Joe Flacco up until Joe Burrow comes back. And if this is the turning point for them, man, they truly need something of that sort right now. No question about it. All right, gonna go on a place a little bit because I got to talk about this game against the Seahawks, or with the Seahawks and the Texans right here. Now, man, given that it took place on Monday Night Football, craziness could have ensued in Seattle. They had a chance to, one, see the Seahawks extend their winning ways on Monday Night Football in a packed out crowd, while also having an opportunity to, if things went a certain way in this game, have the Mariners, the baseball team in the area, make their first ever World Series appearance and just give them even more of a reason to do all the craziness in the world and have all the over-the-top celebrations imaginable about it. While one of those things would not end up becoming the case, unfortunately, the Seahawks still were insistent on putting together a damn great football game to give the fans some life. Oh, man. Now, both teams started out by just having their defenses go right at each other. This was going to be a key in the game, of course. Both of them are just incredibly strong on that front. Have some of the best overall units between the defensive line and between their pieces in the secondary. Yes, the Seahawks are still missing some. Julian Love and Devin Witherspoon were still out. But man, it was still going to be a competitive match there all the same. And then, hey, by the end of the first quarter, oh, shit heated up real quick. Because, hey, for as good as Derek Stingley Jr. might be, he damn near got his ankles broken on this route from Elijah Arroyo. It was a damn good setup to the play, and he just got it over to the far right side of the field for a 27-yard catch. Then you had Elijah Arroyo continue to barrel down yet again later on in the drive before having Zach Charbonnet continue to be the great power back that he is. All of his touchdown runs have been from inside 5 yards. And I'm thinking to myself, because they also mentioned that it was Kenneth Walker III's birthday. He had a great game against the Falcons last year around the same time. And I'm just saying, like, hey, let Kenneth Walker III get in the end zone for his birthday, bro. Like, that's only right. The Seahawks defense was also just continuing to take it to the Texans. For one, biggest thing to note about the entire first half, in fact, because I could try to string this along for drives, but man, there is honestly no getting around the fact that in the first half, the Texans as a rushing unit had just 20 yards on the ground. And not only that, but the drive before this 3 and out forced by the Seahawks defense, it almost looked as if CJ Stroud was tackled in the end zone for a safety by Uchenna Nwosu, and that would be overturned for some reason, even though he was clearly sacked behind the goal line, but that's neither here nor there. Oh, and yeah, as I'll probably be getting into later, that shit would happen again. We could play the coulda, woulda, shoulda game if we wanted to, but the fact that you overturned 2 different safeties that looked to be clear and obvious ones, just something you may not really end up seeing every day. And oh yeah, I mean, this next Seahawks drive was just like clockwork, man. You had fucking Cooper Kupp get deep for a 32-yard catch. And I mean, hey, Jalen Petre just made the tackle instantly, but it wasn't enough to stop him in the moment. Not at all. Not at all. Eventually, it got to a point where the Seahawks had to go for it on 4th down. Again, usually they've gone for a field goal in those situations. They put in those situations, but something compelled them on this night to at least give the fans a little bit of intrigue here. And you would have A.J. Barner get a QB sneak up the middle for a 2-yard gain. Because, hey, that makes sense. While you would have a little bit of resistance as Kamari Lassiter and Jalen Petre combined for a pretty good tackle for loss on Kenneth Walker III, that would be offset because Azeez Al-Shire just wanted to continue these dirty tactics. Like, at that point, it was 3rd down and long. Sam Darnold did not have enough juice to get the first down on it. He was far, far short of the line of the game. And Al-Shire is making the tackle. It starts off inbounds, and yes, at that point, it's legal. But then the man gets him into the sideline and power drives this nigga, power bombs him into the fucking ground. And he's just laid out for a second. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck is inside his mind at this point that compels this nigga to consistently do this shit to people? It makes no fucking sense. They penalized him for that, and before you knew it, they have 1st and 10 from the Houston 11-yard line. And A, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Yeah. Because, see, I was fucking told that the Texans defense, the Texans cornerbacks were going to do everything in their power to lock this man up. And what he do, the first target he got, or one of the first catches, rather, that he got in this game, the man routed the absolute shit out of them. And Darnold threw a fucking laser to him in a tighter window as a different Texans defender was trying to converge. Stingley Jr. got absolutely worked on it. Found him in the back of the end zone. Jackson Smith-Njigba got a touchdown catch. And, hey, he decided to show off a little athleticism as well, getting a nice fucking poster on the fucking goalpost. And, yeah, the refs are just like, they're lame as shit. So you knew they threw a flag for that. And it ended up being an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. Honestly, at that point, nigga, fuck that flag. Nobody cares, bro. And in fact, the man, I gotta find the freeze frame of it, because that's definitely gonna be a wallpaper. But he damn near posterized the man. I can understand why you're a little salty, man. You just wish that you could do that, you know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, at that point, it looked like the Seahawks, and it felt like the Seahawks, honestly, with the fact that the Texans, again, just could not get CJ Stroud going at all. They had a few different plays where it's like, they had this concept in like the single back formation where they kept getting Dalton Schultz open in the flat. And Nico Collins did also get a pretty good catch on Josh Jobe. They tried it multiple times to get him in like 50-50 situations with him. And honestly, in most cases, that would work. Josh Jobe is just not going to match up well physically with Nico Collins here. And the Dalton Schultz thing was pretty good for them. It was working. But outside of that and a few other things, man, the Texans could not really find their rhythm at all. You just get them going into multiple 3-and-out situations here. And then you also had a situation where, while the Texans defense would continue to hang in there for a little bit, it didn't help that you had CJ Stroud get in multiple situations where we were nearing safety territory, even a potential defensive touchdown with how crazy this damn pressure from Ernest Jones IV was. Yet again, while that could have also been a safety, they also overturned that shit. The Texans were still penalized for something different, but it's like, yo, come on, man. Like, what the fuck, man? I don't know, man. Anyways, at this point, with the Seahawks getting the ball back, man, if you get another touchdown, you're treading into blowout territory, to be honest. Here's the thing, though. Like, even after this nice conversion over the top to Jackson Smith-Njigba for 19 yards, something compelled the Seahawks offense to go for a little bit of trickery. They would give Cooper Kupp the ball on an end-around double pass, per se, reverse double pass, and he just threw a pick right to Kalen Bullock. And it's like, I couldn't explain that in that moment. I still don't understand it now. Because you're in field goal range. And it's like, I get that you would love to see the Seahawks have more moments where they do get a little aggressive, a little more unpredictable with some of their play calling. But at this point, man, all the momentum's on your side. You're in field goal range already. It's first down. You've been imposing your will to this point. Why would you even want to give the Texans any opportunity to take momentum away from you in this game by giving them a free pick? And that is where the madness would start on multiple fronts. At the very least, the Texans would manage to take advantage of it. It did take some work. It didn't come without some resistance from the Seahawks defense because they've just continued to be on the ball all season long. But Jahmyr Fairbairn would get a 36-yard field goal in to make this a 14-3 game. And then even with this Seahawks drive right here being promising, at least, nearing the end of the half, Jason Myers also missed the field goal somehow. And so then with 23 seconds left and I think 3 timeouts, the Texans actually had a chance to make this a one-possession ball game. And they would do just that after Jalen Noel just mossed the living shit. Mossed the living fuck out of fucking Ernest Jones IV. Which, again, his back was turned. At that point, yeah, you're far out of position. Jahmyr Fairbairn would get in a deeper field goal to make this a 14-6 ball game. After this could have been again, a much, much more convincing game for the Seahawks right here. I mean, at the very least, their defense in the third quarter and in the fourth, throughout the whole game, they were locked down completely. Oh, and trust me, with how wild this shit got, they kind of needed that. Because, man, you would get CJ Stroud, for whatever reason, kind of overthrowing Nico Collins as he was under duress a little bit, just airballed it. And you had Ernest Jones the fourth slide right into an interception to get the Seahawks going. Hey, I like the aggressiveness as well because they got in the fourth down territory once again, but similar case. You force a turnover, you have momentum back on your side now. Why keep your drive this short and allow that offense to go back out there? You got to try to make them pay for it if you can. And Jackson Smith-Njigba was being shadowed by Kamari Lassiter, but it wasn't enough. Torched him right over the top for an 18-yard catch. And a beautiful throw from Sam Darnold once again to convert that. They would be stuffed incredibly short with the resistance from both Danielle Hunter and also Jalen Petre, again, kind of accounting for that flat play in the same way that the Seahawks should have been doing with Dalton Schultz. He was not fooled by the fake at all, and he was just covering around the whole time. Only got a yard out of that. You'd probably be looking for way more in a short yardage situation. The Seahawks would get a field goal anyways. And then, even with Dalton Schultz again making that shit work, you had everybody getting active, bro. Everybody. You had Nick Amawori get his second deflection of the game and get a little cool hit on Nico Collins over the middle of the field to make him pay for even thinking about going across the middle. Then you had Drake Thomas kind of fighting with Dare Ogunbowale in what was honestly good simultaneous effort from both sides. I'm not going to lie. And that pass ended up being incomplete, forcing a Texans punt. Could have gotten very scary here. You had the Seahawks backed up tremendously because, hey, D'Amico Ryans is like, okay, we're going to trust our defense at this point. And they certainly made good on that because Will Anderson Jr. just completely bullied the living fuck out of Charles Cross. And you had Sam Darnold fumble the ball with Will Anderson Jr. forcing it and then recovering it for a touchdown to get the Texans right back in the game despite not doing much on offense at this point. But hey, even with that turnover, the Seahawks at the very least could get right back out there and have their own response, and it would start out fittingly with Jackson Smith-Njigba setting the tone of the drive. They did get a good couple of plays in afterwards, but following them stymieing Zach Charbonnet in the backfield, despite him, again, being a great power threat, the Seahawks would push the lead back up to 8. This Texans drive was pretty interesting. I don't know what went into it. They got the flat play to Dalton Schultz again, and then managed to get into 3rd and 1. They hadn't ran the ball well in the game to this point, and yet something compelled them to give Woody Marks 2 straight runs, and on both occasions, they called that shit up tremendously. Not at all. I don't know. I really don't know what went into that. The bodies just converged all over Woody Marks in the backfield, and at that point, there was nothing he could do about it. You'd have Jackson Smith-Njigba not only get another 19-yard catch, but also draw a penalty that put the Seahawks into goal-to-go territory where Zach Charbonnet has just continued to make his money all season long, and he would get another touchdown on the night to give them a 15-point lead. Everything else that happens in this game would be madness. Because even when it seemed like the Texans were out of it, and I guess you have to give them credit, they wouldn't stop fighting. You can also think of this as like if you're the Seahawks here, up by 15, with your defense playing lights out for this long, all you need is one put-away drive, and you're good, bro. And that shit did not happen. I don't know how to explain it. It would not happen. Like, they continue to force the action. They were on CJ Stroud's ass all night long. As I continue alluding to, they couldn't establish the run at all. Everything was going right for that defense, and yet they had to consistently make big-time play after big-time play because the Seahawks wouldn't stop turning the ball over. You had a fucking fumble get forced by MJ Stewart on Elijah Arroyo as he was trying to run for the conversion. And then you had Sam Darnold throw an interception to Derek Stingley Jr. that got a bit contested because he kept on chipping away at Jackson Smith-Njigba's face mask. And that devolved into a little bit of chippiness on the sideline, with someone literally having to step in and protect Jackson Smith-Njigba because his helmet was off. And you had other defenders with helmets on trying to beat the living shit out of him. That kind of stuff. Yet, even with all that being the case, the Seahawks in the fourth quarter on defense forced a 3-and-out with multiple CJ Stroud incompletions. In fact, I think in situations where, because CJ Stroud wasn't necessarily passive the whole night, but in this fourth quarter especially, they made it get even more out of hand. At a certain point, they tracked numbers for both quarterbacks in terms of passes, 20 or more air yards down the field. And while Sam Darnold would finish the game doing exceptionally well in that front, CJ Stroud would finish the game going 1 of 11 for 29 yards and an interception in those situations. The pressure never stopped getting there. And it almost reached a head on like a certain point of the drive, one of these drives in the latter portion of the game, because as he was falling to the ground on one of these plays, I think it was it might have been this possession right here. Like, he's getting tackled by Drake Thomas and Leonard Williams, and his knee kind of buckles on the ground. And like, well, that could have been a pretty scary turn of events for the Texans. At the very least, he was able to get back in the game, and he kept firing. He kept finding, a few wide receivers down the field. At this point, Nico Collins was also out dealing with something. But you would have on 4th and 5, for example, Jalen Noel get up for a 21-yard gain to get them in the goal-to-go territory. And yet, the Seahawks proceeded to get a nice tackle from Tayakana, a deflection from Tayakana on 3rd down, literally just going up like a fucking shot blocker, and then and swatting down that pass, and then forcing a false start penalty that led to a much worse position for the Texans to attack from. And they ended up turning the ball over on downs in that situation. Even with the Seahawks offense not really being able to get as much going at this point, the Seahawks would once again be challenged mightily with a combination of a few penalties and some big plays from these wide receivers. And they damn near got it again. But Woody Marks would have enough, kind of effort on what would turn into a scramble drill. And when they absolutely needed to get on the board, they got their only offensive touchdown of the night on this Woody Marks catch from 4 yards out to maybe give them a fighting chance. Now it's a one-possession ball game, despite all the madness. And yet, with Ka'imi Fairbairn not kicking it into the end zone, as we've seen in a few other games this season, the Seahawks were just able to get right down on the ground, run the football, and end the game that way. It didn't help that unnecessary roughness was called to give them an automatic first down, though. But the Seahawks, even with the potential scare, would again give some Seahawks fans a bit of, positive energy following this 27-19 win. positive energy they might have desperately needed. Because, again, literally, the game between the Mariners and the Blue Jays capped off as soon as the Seahawks-Texans game was starting to, get into like second quarter action, and it was just demoralizing. The cameramen had all the fun in the world with that shit, man. They continued to pan the camera over to just absolutely depressed and dejected Seahawks and Mariners fans in the stands, man. It was rough to watch. But hey, no, this team, they did tremendous work. No other thing you can say there, man. They at least improved to 31-13 on Monday Night Football in this situation. Sam Darnold, 54.8% completion for 213 yards and a touchdown and an interception. On the ground, Kenneth Walker had 66 yards on 17 carries. While Zach Charbonnet would have 12 rushes for 49 yards and 2 touchdowns. As for Jackson Smith and Jigba, he just keeps it going, man. 8 receptions and another 100-yard game for him for 123 yards and a touchdown catch. He now has 800 yards on the season. Absolutely insane stuff. Elijah Arroyo would also have 4 catches for 42 yards. As for the Texans, man, like I said, man, the Seahawks defense was all over him, bro. CJ Stroud would complete just 46.9% of his passes for 229 yards and a touchdown and an interception. He ended up being their leading rusher in a game in which the Texans ran for just 56 yards on 3.3 yards per carry. Dalton Schultz had 9 receptions for 98 yards. Jalen Noel also had 4 receptions for 77 yards. And shockingly, Nico Collins had 4 receptions for 27 yards. Like, that is a pretty crazy case to look at. You don't even have all the core guys in, and you're containing Nico Collins like that. That also helped. Because typically, if you're not going to establish a run, well, they're going to force feed Nico Collins and try to make sure that you can't stop him in any way. And the Seahawks definitely got the upper hand in that aspect. They improved to 5-2. They've got a bye week following this. Hey, they're just on a pretty good course right now. That is legitimately it. All right, moving on to the Chiefs versus the Raiders. The definition of light work for a team. The definition. To look at things from an offensive perspective first, I mean, they automatically got Travis Kelce going right back, after him getting season high in receiving yards. I mean, he had a couple of different catches in this one on this opening drive, including one for a 44-yard gain. Just like that. Noah Gray himself is also always due for a requisite catch. We know that. But hey, this game would bring about the return of one Rashee Rice. And his presence was instantly felt. I mean, the fact that they got a damn 92-yard touchdown drive on this one kind of shows you just how much he does mean. And fittingly, he got in for this first touchdown in more than a year and change without even stepping foot on the field in this case. Got that done instantly on the first drive. You get into the next one, and again, just a long, drawn-out one, because let's be honest, at this point, the Raiders' defense could not do anything about the game plan here. They couldn't stop them at all. Especially when you look at the score, literally, there is nothing that they could have done. There's nothing that they did do. Quite frankly. before you knew it, Hollywood Brown would get himself in the end zone on another touchdown catch. And again, this one was just so fitting because for whatever reason, they had Darnay Holmes covering him. And it's like, okay, if you're going to do that, like that man is just a fucking cone, bro. Like he's not going to guard him up like that. He pressed him. The simplest cut on the slant got him without hesitation. And Marquise Brown promptly got his. Before you knew it, the Chiefs were really just trying to put this one away at this point. And honestly, it looked, with the way that it went, like this game was already just completely done. But they just continue to bury him. I mean, yes, did it help that Jamal Adams and even Raul made a couple of good plays on this drive, with the latter almost managing to get an interception on Patrick Mahomes? Yeah, those are solid plays. Fine. But they still allow Juju Smith-Schuster to barrel his way into a first down conversion following that. And he would get another catch on the drive before Rashee Rice would get his second touchdown catch on the day. He also got a good milestone set as he reached 10 career touchdown catches in this game. So that's a pretty cool situation to be in for him. Before you knew it, at the end of the half, Raiders were still completely shut out, and that would continue with the Chiefs' opening drive of the third quarter. Mahomes just continued to get multiple people involved. Rashard Smith, as I've continued stating here, man, when it comes to his efforts out of the backfield, bro, he is legitimately been a weapon for him. The fact that they got this damn conversion from 13 yards out with him, like, that is just, it's wild to me how that has become the case. But hey, you could very much appreciate that. That's why they went out and got him. Because I think at SMU, he might have been a wide receiver for a little bit of time, but I know that he was a running back for them last season. The Chiefs almost got themselves into a situation with Marquise Brown fumbling, following a Jeremy Chin punch out, but they would manage to recover right back and go on smooth sailing. Darnay Holmes would once again get absolutely cooked. The man literally pushes Xavier Worthy down, and he still allows him to work his way back to the football and moss the living hell out of him. Now, Xavier Worthy would go out with an injury of some kind at this point. I think he was still okay enough to return, if I'm not mistaken. But either way, it just shows you how little resistance and how little fight, I guess, this Raiders team really put up in this game. Because before you knew it, Isaiah Pacheco was punching it in for a 7-yard touchdown run. And then the Chiefs later on in this, with another deep bomb over to Tyquan Thornton, they would eventually manage to get a field goal with Harrison Butker. From their standpoint, there's nothing much more to speak about from their perspective in this game because, well, they didn't really need to do anything else. It got so bad that this man, Chris Jones, was spotted with a bottle of an alcoholic beverage on the fucking sideline, bro. What is football going to do for me at this point? The man was trying to get lit. Because they were dominating him that badly. Just a dominant game for the Chiefs all around. Looking at their numbers, Mahomes had 74.3% completion percentage for 286 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Isaiah Pacheco had 57 rushing yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce had 3 receptions for 54 yards. Rashee Rice had 7 receptions for 42 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Rashard Smith had 5 receptions for 42 yards as well. Like, that's how you know you're kind of pitching a really good game if you can get 9 different receivers involved with a catch in this one. And hey, the Chiefs could certainly afford to make that happen. That's just the kind of opening that Rashee Rice would give them with his return here. Truly going to be interesting to see if they can keep that momentum going. But don't look now. They're now back above 500. They're creeping up into repossessing control of the AFC West. Obviously, the Broncos still have a hold of it now. And I'll get to that later, but my goodness. Yeah, the Raiders, man. This was more one-sided for a reason. The Raiders legitimately did absolutely nothing. They didn't get in any kind of score at a single point. You got blown out 31-0. They had a combined 100 yards in terms of actual numbers. And then when accounting for net yardage and things like that, they actually ended up finishing with 95 yards on 30 plays for a paltry 3.2 yards per carry. Around. Okay? And it wasn't even a situation where, at least for most of the game, you had the Chiefs forcing turnovers. No. This was just flat out ineptitude from this Raiders offense. They could not do anything at all, like I've said. Yes, they did lose the football one time. But by that point, you had Kenny Pickett in the ballgame, getting a rep at this time. And the nigga proceeded to fumble on the first fucking snap. The first snap he got, I shit you not, this nigga put the ball on the ground. Story of the game. Story of this game. Story of the season for the Raiders right now. I this is just incredibly uncharacteristic stuff for Pete Carroll to be dealing with. But I guess the team as a whole, yes, they are losing out on having Brock Bowers' services right now. But damn, even if Brock Bowers was there, man, you couldn't stop the Chiefs at all from initiating their offense. And you yourself couldn't establish anything concrete to work with at all. I mean, come on, man. Like, what are we supposed to take away from that? It's clear they have not learned much going back from last season. And now they're sitting at 2-5. And I don't really know if this gets any better for the Raiders this season. You'll hope that it can. You would hope that Brock Bowers is on his way back in some fashion. But, man, again, would that save them completely? I don't think it would. They just put up an absolute fucking stinker in this game. What would end up being a pretty interesting game here is the Eagles versus the Vikings in around this same time slot. Now, I'm not going to lie. Carson Wentz was looking for his revenge. Let's be honest here. The former Eagle himself was still set to start this game because J.J. McCarthy is still out at this point, right? So it's all on him. And again, as we say all the time, putting the game in his hands could potentially be a very dangerous thing. Yet the Vikings might not have had a choice to do it if they wanted to win this game. Started out the same way for the Eagles. Like, Saquon Barkley got a few solid runs to start out the game, and they even changed the pace up a little bit by getting Tank Bigsby active for an 11-yard run here. They faced a bit of resistance because of that good old blitz from Brian Flores. But once they got a few yards back and they decided to go for it on 4th and short, there's only one thing that could get them out of such a situation in Minnesota plus territory. One thing that everybody's been clamoring for the Eagles to do all season long. As A.J. Brown would say, it's passing. It's passing. And he proceeded to get an elite double move on Josh Metellus for a 37-yard touchdown. It just completely burned him. You know, I can give Josh Metellus a tremendous amount of respect for being as versatile as he is. But to match him up being a much slower defensive back against A.J. Brown with his combination of size and speed, yeah, there was no way that he was winning that battle in that situation, bro. And he certainly lost it, giving the Eagles a 7-0 lead. All right. The Vikings would manage to get Jordan Addison on multiple occasions on this drive, as Carson Wentz was kind of settling down at a decent way, I guess. Then things hit the fan once you had Carson Wentz just be put in an unfavorable situation, honestly. This one, unlike some of the other plays that would happen in this game, this one was not on him. I don't know how you expect the man to get up all the way high like this for the snap, man. The center just threw that shit far over his head. And you go from 3rd and 10 inside the red zone to 4th and 32, damn near out of field goal range. If not for the fact that Will Reichard had such a strong leg and booted in a 59-yard field goal with ease, Vikings wouldn't have even scored on this possession because of that stupid ass shit. But hey, they got there, so what are you going to do? The Vikings defense would then force a 3-and-out before they would then have to deal with the bullshit from Carson Wentz trying to hero ball everything. This is the shit, man. This is what we be talking about. And it didn't take any time, pretty much at the start of the second quarter, for him to start this negative streak of plays, man. You had Jalen Carter disrupt the pocket that Carson Wentz was in at this point. And again, when you're feeling pressure from Jalen Carter, that makes sense. That's certainly bound to affect the play. But the man gets hit and he throws it right into the hands of Jalen Hunt, just waiting in the curl area for the ball to come to him. And he just gets an easy pick six. The very next possession, in just a matter of a couple plays, you had Carson Wentz fumble the ball, and then you had this man chuck up a fucking deep shot over to Jordan Addison. And it was just so off platform, so inaccurate that it ended up being underthrown. Andrew Makuba Sr. was able to hawk it down, honestly, with ease. And he just gets another interception on Carson Wentz here. Luckily for that offense, the defense was so damn strong. They were able to contain Saquon Barkley for most of the rest of the game, including this damn 6-yard loss here, with Redmond getting back there for a pretty good tackle for loss. And from there, they punt. The Vikings would get it back into one possession in no time, with Justin Jefferson just continuing to be a dominant force. Like, bro, I mean, this man, Justin Jefferson, quite literally just extends this play, even with having multiple defenders in his face. He was unfazed at that point. And that kind of extra effort allowed the Vikings to get all the way into the red zone. They would be initially in position to score, and they did, if not for their center continuing to self-sabotage the team. Literally gets penalized for this, overturning it, and they have no other choice but to settle for the field goal. But hey, at least you're within a possession. And honestly, they would end the half that way from bearing that into something that could have been way, way worse, hey, the Vikings would have no other choice but to take that, man. They just, you got to live with that. The Vikings would at least open up the third quarter pretty nicely. They were able to take off a good chunk of clock, drove down in a good amount of plays, and, even with TJ Hawkinson getting caught before the line of the game, they would once again have Will Reichert get in another field goal to make this a 5-point ball game. But in a matter of moments, mere moments, Jalen Hurts, something clicked for him this game. They had been struggling to be consistent in the passing game all season long, but it took nothing for Jalen Hurts to hit up Devontae Smith this fucking time. We remember the situation that he had in terms of failing to get Devontae Smith over the top of the defense for what could have been an 85-plus yard touchdown catch against the Giants on Thursday Night Football. They were in a similar spot here. Devontae Smith had single coverage because of the safety dropping down, and Jalen Hurts, this time, delivered the most accurate pass imaginable. Hit him over the top, put it right in the breadbasket, hit him in stride, and Devontae Smith is gone for a 79-yard touchdown catch to give the Eagles a 21-9 lead. It would take a much longer time for them to work this out, but the Vikings would promptly respond in their own way. As you had Jordan Mason, despite him also being kind of contained a little bit from what he may usually be doing with this team, he would get in for a touchdown run. Initially, I didn't think that he got in the end zone. But, they need any part of the ball crossing the line, I guess, in this situation. And, well, what do you know? When you slow it down, look at it in instant replay, you can see that is exactly what happened. So, they let it stand. And you were back to a 5-point ball game here. It could have gotten potentially dangerous for the Eagles in this fourth quarter. I mean, there's almost no way that you have Jake Elliott miss this damn 41-yard field goal, and all of a sudden the Vikings had life. If not for Maro Ajomo putting a stop to all those plans, despite them getting back-to-back 20-yard catches from Jordan Addison to open up the drive. He'd been having a hell of a game to that point. And yet they were still able to overcome that, keep the damage to a minimum. But they were going to need their offense to step up big time. And again, with passing, through passing. Partially because, again, Saquon Barkley, had a few decent runs here. But, man, like all season, he still has yet to have that game. That overall game. Yes, a few moments. But that overall game that really shows you the true dominance that he can have on a game. Yet to have that happen. Yet, from there, okay, you're going to contain Saquon Barkley, rather, but hey, we still have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. And what do you know, on back-to-back plays, Jalen Hurts will hit up both of them, respectively, with A.J. Brown just being, again, the physicality that he possesses. They had Byron Murphy Jr. trying to grab on him the whole time, and that still didn't matter because he caught it and then carried him into the end zone while hauling in the 26-yard touchdown. The Vikings would have an interesting last drive here. They made the right progress down the field. You even had Carson Wentz getting a little shake and bake on the ground to pick up multiple third downs. And they got close to scoring. In fact, honestly, I'm not going to lie. When thinking about this one, I guess they overturned it because the ball moved. I personally felt like TJ Hawkinson got that touchdown catch. Personally. That is a tough, missed opportunity. But they would still pick up the subsequent fourth down. And you had to convert. Fine. Now, what were you going to do in go-to-go territory? Well, Josh Uche put them behind the sticks instantly. And from there, they tried to pass. The Eagles were making sure that nothing was going to get them over the top. So they settled for the short completion to TJ Hockenson, and they would eventually have to settle for another field goal. At that point, Saquon Barkley would cap off the game, but only after Jalen Hurts would throw a fucking dime to A.J. Brown once again. This time from 45 yards out, despite him dropping the previous second down play. That doesn't matter. You still have to have enough trust in your guy to go back to him in a situation like this with the game on the line. Hey, Hurts, despite all these different rumors they want to keep starting in the media about them potentially having a rift and shit like that because of all this, like, who cares about that? Still expressed enough trust in him in that moment to go after him, and it paid off, effectively ending the game and giving the Eagles a 28-22 win. They are now also 5-2, while the Vikings fell to 3-3. At the very least, I think I saw something saying that J.J. McCarthy is close to making his way back. But even that, like, is that their game plan? How exactly are they going to make that work? I don't know. But as for the numbers, Jalen Hurts had retained it for most of the game, lost it for a second, and then got it right back. His 82.6% completion for 326 yards and 3 touchdowns, along with negative 10 rushing yards for some reason. But those passing numbers landed him a perfect quarterback rating. So, hey, y'all telling the motherfucker to pass, but hey, look at what he did once that shit happened. I mean, there you go. There you go, man. Like, come on, bro. Saquon Barkley, again, just 18 rushes for 44 yards. Like, again, multiple defenses. I don't know what it is. You could say that it might be a little bit of a hangover in that sense. But it is, it's just pretty interesting to see that nosedive in production, for sure. Even then, with the Eagles doing this in the passing game, they could, afford to deal with that at least for a little bit. Devontae Smith had 9 receptions for 183 yards and a touchdown, while A.J. Brown had 4 catches for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. Their 304 combined yards and 13 combined catches are like some of their most combined receptions and yardage in a game as a duo since they've both been on the Eagles together. It's nice to have that be just such a luxury for them. And again, it does kind of go back to the theme that the Eagles, I guess, still possess at this point. In just that, you're going to do whatever you can to win the football game on any given week. Even with Saquon Barkley consistently having these struggles, if you can still find ways to work around those issues and win, that's all that counts at the end of the day. Because that record is going to matter come playoff time. And we've seen this team elevate in the playoffs. As for the Vikings, Carson Wentz, 61.9% completion for him for 313 yards and 2 interceptions. Jordan Mason had 57 rushing yards and a touchdown. Jordan Addison had 9 receptions for 128 yards, and Justin Jefferson had 5 receptions for 79 yards, while TJ Hockenson had 6 receptions for 43 yards. All right. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Moving on to the Cowboys and the Commanders. Man, like, this is like, man, this was such an embarrassing game. from multiple lenses. Now, yes, the Cowboys, were able to get CeeDee Lamb going pretty much instantly. I mean, bro, first catch, first target, easy fucking money on Marshon Lattimore, no question about it. But the bullshit for him especially, not just for this Commanders team as a whole, but for him specifically, it was just absolutely hard for me to sit there and watch this man be out there on the football field in this game. Legitimately, from the jump, you had him already get baited into a DPI by George Pickens on this drive. And that would eventually lead to Javonte Williams punching it in for a touchdown run. The Commanders' offense was naturally going to be sluggish as it was. I personally would have felt like they were still feeling the after effects of losing that way on Monday Night Football. So having them just punt the ball on a 3-and-out on this drive was fair. And I mean, hey, the Commanders' front lines had a little bit of a response at least to this. They had Jacob Martin and Daron Payne nab Javonte Williams in the backfield for what would be a safety. And then they did follow that up well with Jaden Daniels throwing an absolute laser beam to Chris Moore from 44 yards out. Again, I don't really even know how he managed to do it, but he ran a pretty good route, got wide open, and there you go. From there, Zach Ertz, as reliable as he has been, managed to get in a 5-yard touchdown catch. Still, though, the shit did not stop, man. At least Marshon Lattimore got a deflection on this drive, but not before allowing George Pickens to haul in an absolute beauty over him. Oh no, never mind. That was Trey Amos, but yeah, I'm mixing that shit up with something else that would happen later in the game. It's just that bad. At the very least, Brandon Aubrey, once you get into plus territory, is going to be an automatic 3 points. You can just pencil it in every single time. It would not change there. The Commanders' offense still had their fair share of struggles, but at the very least, if you could get the defensive response, fine. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't do it. There was a clear miscommunication on this route, but either way, once CeeDee Lamb broke into this post route and got, I think it was Quan Martin back there, it ended up being a wrap, because not only did you have him burn the living shit out of him, toasted him completely, and Dak Prescott threw a beautiful pass. Don't get me wrong, you also had Marshon Lattimore converge into the would-be tackle attempt, and he knocked both of them out of the play, allowing CeeDee Lamb to just run completely free the rest of the way for a 74-yard touchdown catch to get it back like that and put the Cowboys up by 9. At just the end of the first quarter, essentially. Again, the Commanders tried, but man, I don't know. They're just going through it right now. It doesn't help that you still had Terry McLaurin out for this game. You also had Deebo Samuel Sr. out of this game with a heel injury. So naturally, trying to get these wide receivers to be legitimate threats down the field was going to be a difficult task. But with them not being able to establish the run as much in this one, and you do have to credit the Cowboys front seven for that as well, it forced their hand. And they just became, after a while, truly desperate. Again, Commanders' defense, especially when you look at their front seven, at the very least they attempted to make a few plays every now and then. And they would force a punt here. But the Cowboys would once again be given short field position following a turnover on downs, despite Jalen Lane just cooking the absolute shit out of Bridges on a different double move. Proving that he's more than just a return specialist out here. He could legitimately be a weapon of a wide receiver for him. They would still come up incredibly short. Again, did the Cowboys move the ball much on this drive? No. They had just a fucking 8-play, 11-yard sequence. But, again, it's Brandon Aubrey. Booted that shit in from 61 yards, and that could have been good from much deeper. Like, I think they've still taken the bionic leg nickname to their liking when they talk about him. Man, it makes the absolute most sense in the world, dude. Like, he is just a fucking... He's a beast in this shit, man. No question about it. Both teams would have successive punts before the Commanders would get their most promising drive of the day. They drove 7 plays down the field and got 68 yards to go with that in just a minute and 11 seconds within the 2-minute warning, and managed to score. Now, yes, this was helped by a few penalties, don't get me wrong, but hey, they were still able to get Jaden Daniels making sound enough reads. They also had Jerry McNichols get a good run, pushing them to the goal line. And from there, it was Jaden Daniels just taking it straight in there, untouched, pretty much, for a 1-yard touchdown run. But in 35 seconds, the Commanders, yeah. Because their defense, again, was just so fucking... Again, you have to look at Marshon Lattimore here, because you get the contributions from Von Miller and Jacob Martin in terms of combo sack and Dak Prescott on the first play. But tell me why this man, Marshon Lattimore, gave so much leverage to George Pickens, just allowing him to scurry along freely on the right side of the field. Or at least right side of the screen, rather, on the replay. And at that point, before you know it, with all that space in the world, Dak Prescott just fires it right down the field. George Pickens hauls it right over Marshon Lattimore beautifully, man. And then the man pushes him out of bounds, has the nerve to talk all this shit to him. But, you as the Ohio State man gave up the big fucking play and had been giving up multiple big and untimely plays at that point for this defense. So how are you even going to try to feel a way about it? And then with Javonte Williams just completely sapping the life out of him on a 33-yard run, just barreling his way down near the goal line, it'd be Jake Ferguson, uncovered, getting in a 2-yard touchdown catch to make this a 27-15 ball game, just like that. The most pressing development that would take place in the second half would be in the third quarter on this possession that ended in a fumble. Now, I wasn't all too sure of whether or not this was a fumble or not. But either way, they would let it stand. The Cowboys would get the ball back. But most importantly, Jaden Daniels was down with an injury. And as they tried to figure out what this was, they would eventually rule him out for the game with a hamstring injury of some kind. And from that moment on, Cowboys took full advantage of that and continued to not let up. This came with a little bit of effort from the Commanders, but it was comical, to say the least. I mean, Javonte Williams continued to impose his will. Let's just be completely honest about that. And Marshon Lattimore is gone out incredibly sad at this point. You have Jake Ferguson get his second touchdown catch on the day. And then, man, you have Marcus Mariota step in the game, which makes sense as a quality backup. You don't have Jaden Daniels at this point, so you've got to use what you can. And they tried to get some things going, but man,
they asked me, and I'm going to share the recipe I used to lose 20.
This pick from Daron Bland, man, that was just a microcosm of how the game went. No matter what the Commanders tried to throw at the Cowboys, bruh, like something was just off about it every time. The man tried his absolute best to target, I think it was either one of Mac Nichols or Rodriguez Jr. out of the backfield on a dump-off route. And the man threw it so late to where Daron Bland, the pick six meister himself, leapt out in front of the pass to get a pick six. And poor Tyler Bijan, the former center for the Cowboys as well, who had recently signed with the Commanders, man tried his absolute hardest to keep pace with him, and he could not. We all know that. 68-yard pick six. That effectively ended the game. Yeah, you could have the Commanders get a touchdown from Chris Rodriguez Jr. on a drive, but that was it. The Cowboys would win the game 44-22. Think about this when you look at the Cowboys here. And honestly, it's good that they got a win in this case. Because for them to be one of the leading offenses in like the past 3 games, per se. Past 3 games for them. They've been just completely heating up on offense. They hadn't turned the ball over a single time. And yet, entering this game, per se, they had a win, a loss, and a fucking tie. Goes to show you how shit their defense is. But they faced a shittier defense. At least, that's what some people will tell you. And man, it felt like that. Especially with, again, just the terrible inconsistency from that cornerback room led by Marshon Lattimore. And you're thinking, like, man, he would have been the leader of this unit. In a perfect world, how the fuck is that happening to him? I don't know, my brother. I'm not going to lie to you. Dak Prescott would complete 70% of his passes for 264 yards and 3 touchdowns. Javonte Williams would have 19 rushes for 116 yards and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb had 5 receptions for 110 yards and the aforementioned touchdown in his return. And George Pickens would have 4 receptions for 82 yards. As for the Commanders, it was a rough game for Jaden Daniels regardless, despite him having 2 total touchdowns, completing just 54.5% of his passes. But yes, him dealing with a hamstring injury is certainly going to put this team in a bit of an interesting situation. Not only do you have a game against the Chiefs next week on Monday Night Football, but you also have the damn Seahawks to face off against on Sunday Night Football on November 2nd. And I don't give a damn who's playing in that game. We all know how that shit is going to go down right now. But at the very least, you want Jaden Daniels healthy and available for those games to give you a fighting chance to win both. Because those chances would ride exponentially on his availability. That's just the truth. And I think they've mentioned he's day-to-day at this point. So I guess it is only a matter of time before we get some designations on this. The rushing attack was a little disproportionate, but they did have 136 yards on the ground as a team on 4.9 yards per carry. Did it help them win, though? Absolutely not. Absolutely not, bro. Jalen Lane would have 3 receptions for 60 yards, and Chris Moore would have 2 receptions for 59, while Zach Ertz would have 3 receptions for 37 yards and a touchdown. And also, Robbie Anderson had 4 receptions for 36 yards in this game. After which, he was reverted back to the practice squad. Wow. Okay. Moving on to the Falcons and the 49ers. Coming into this game, expected an absolute masterclass between 2 very good, very great, two of the best running backs in the NFL in Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson. As a matter of fact, they showed a graphic stating that he, entering the game, was on pace for 2,794 scrimmage yards in 17 games, which would break Chris Johnson's 2009 season, which he went for 2K yards and had over 2,500 from scrimmage. So, hey, man, and again, keeping pace in a situation like that is everything but to even be brought up in a similar context like that is just absolutely great. It's as simple as that. However, you can't talk all of this about Bijan Robinson without giving your respect to Christian McCaffrey. Bro. He went absolutely stupid in this ball game. Like, oh my goodness, man. It didn't get started out this way immediately, but a big reason for that, when you look at it all across the board, because they happen in chunks. You weren't getting anything too incredibly explosive just yet, but you were getting solid runs that continued to move the chains and grind out the defense. And it almost reminds you of how Kyle Shanahan would typically run this unit. I mean, you saw it in the first drive, even if it didn't result in points. And it eventually would, which is where I'm going to make my grand point about this. But for the 49ers defense as well, yeah. Once they held Bijan Robinson in check, at least in the rushing attack, it gave them a little bit of leeway to do damage everywhere else. Tremendous credit to multiple guys, especially when you look at a person like Tatum Bethune, when you look at some of the other cornerbacks that they had in this game, because they have multiple players out, and obviously Fred Warner is a big fish in this situation. So for Bethune to come in and make some of the plays that he did in this night, while taking the place of Fred Warner in this game, in fact, the number that he had on was the rookie year number that Fred Warner was also donning at the time, which I did find really interesting. But that ended up being tremendously huge for them. This was a long, drawn-out drive from the Falcons, man. 19 plays and 60 yards. But for you to not break it all and hold these niggas to a field goal, which Parker Romo would make, hey, man, those finer details are what can lead to victories for teams. Now, it got a little rough for Mac Jones. Christian McCaffrey, man, legitimately taking advantage of open gaps in the rushing lanes, spinning past people, making people miss, reminds you of the old CMC. And what he was doing, honestly, not only as a Panther, when he had the room to and when he was healthy, but when he first became a 49er. Just completely changed around the complexion of the team from the onset. But McCorkle Jones would not keep the ball on the ground. He wanted to test his luck, darn it. And this one wasn't his fault. I'm not gonna lie. This interception wasn't his fault, man. It wasn't. The shit got tipped up right into Caden Ellis's hands because Juwan Jennings just didn't want to bring the ball down for some reason. At least they prevented a lot of craziness from happening. Bijan Robinson, once again, held to a no gain. And from there, without them being able to get ahead of the curve from the first down, that just put everything else out of rhythm for them completely. Now, yeah, a DPI was called here on Daron Bland, but still, they were not able to establish anything at all. Forced into a punt from there. And then the 49ers would respond with a touchdown. This is where I would have to bring it up. You had 4 different passing plays on this, but man, otherwise, it was a combination of Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson Jr. just getting low to the ground and exploiting this defense in the rushing attack. And eventually, it would be Christian McCaffrey to finish off the drive. Not only did he get near or pretty much a good third down conversion here out of the backfield because they made the grand decision to just leave him open out there and unaccounted for. But you also had him run for a touchdown to give the 49ers a 7-3 lead. And while Michael Penix Jr. would fumble, leading to a different 49ers field goal, the 10-3 score would eventually be the one to kick off halftime. Anticlimactically, I might add, because Michael Penix Jr. would have an intentional grounding penalty called against him. So, that is just tough, bro. That is tough, man. Oh my goodness, man. I mean, my gosh, bro. Like, you can't. Seriously, they're going to call that every time, though. The man was not outside of the tackle box. It was bad. It was rough, bro. It was rough. But yeah, back to my point about Christian McCaffrey. Okay. Yes, he had been struggling to establish the run this season, and that affected the team as a whole, right? You know, it had been one of the lowest marks for them through their first, 6 or 7 games since Kyle Shanahan's been there, honestly. You very rarely see them struggle on the ground with their bye committee system that they usually have, and then with Christian McCaffrey being force-fed once he came to the organization. But, of course, in all of that time, for most of that time, you can make the case that they were missing someone very vital. You have to go all the way back to the Seahawks game. Now, yes, the Seahawks have proven to be an exceptional defense. So I don't really think that there's much that Christian McCaffrey might have done, at least in that specific game. Although, again, he's had his fucking days against the damn defense. Don't get me wrong. But they are a fucking stout rushing attack. Just an incredible front seven in that regard. Yet in these other games, and past that point, with George Kittle being out, you're naturally going to struggle. The second that George Kittle came back, you saw the impact that he has. Not just as a receiver and a tremendous physical threat with enough speed to get by as a tight end, but also a fucking gritty blocker. Real shit. They had that man blocking on the outside. They had that man swinging through motions on the inside to set up blocks and get other runs either further inside or out to the perimeter of the line. And it just made things so much easier for that offense as a whole. Not only did CMC in the first half have his most yards in between tackles since 2022, and that on the night ended up being 83 yards in between tackles. He also had his most yards before contact this season for Christian McCaffrey. Because typically in these situations, he just gets stuffed at the line. And of course it's going to be hard for him to get into second gear when he's automatically being shut down before he can even break the contain of the gap. Of course that's going to happen. Yet, with George Kittle setting those things up, he, by himself, on plays in which he was a blocker and involved in these rushing plays, he accounted for more than 100 yards and a high percentage of the team's total rushing yards in the game. Granted, he did not have a single yard in this game. He didn't even catch the ball. Had only just one target. I don't give a fuck about that. Looking at this game right here. Because when you see that impact being put down on the front lines, and also having your defense as well hold up their end of the bargain in ensuring that Bijan Robinson did not prove to be the hero for them in this one, that is where you won the game at, simply put. Weirdly enough, in the second half to start off, he actually had Scott Moore get a catch in, and even then he kind of bobbled it a little bit. I don't think he was expecting it that way. But they took good advantage of his speed, even if you have James Pierce Jr. with as fast and athletic as he is as an edge rusher. Scott Moore is just going to be levels ahead of him in that regard. So that ended up being a really good screenplay setup. And it's like, that's probably where you'd want to use Scott Moore the most. That's where he's found the most success at as a receiver in the NFL to this point. So, why not take advantage of that? They would be stopped eventually as they got closer into Falcons territory and settled for a field goal. From there, the Falcons would respond. It did help that Jamal Agnew. Hey, credit to Jamal Agnew for still being in the league, by the way. That's definitely nice to see. He'd get an electric return that got them near midfield, essentially. And from there, Bijan Robinson was able to get some decent carries in. And he also had Michael Penix Jr. hit up Kyle Pitts Jr., senior, on a nice wheel route before it became the Bijan Robinson show. Not a person you can hold down forever. He just got out in space on, this screenplay. And from there, his individual effort would do all the rest to get the Falcons into the end zone and make this a 3-point ball game. It remained that way for the most part, and that's just got to be tough work for the Falcons. To know that their defense, again, one of the top units, if not the top unit in the NFL at this point, is still keeping you in the game like that, you'd think that you'd be trying your absolute hardest to answer as an offense. They would fail to do so. They did get close on this drive, as it would end up being their longest one during this time right here. But even with Kyle Pitts Sr., Bijan Robinson getting them close, before you knew it, they would be aggressive and go for it on fourth down. But one of these backup guys, again in Lucas, did manage to get a deflection headed in Drake London's way. And from there, it was game time for that 49ers out. They got right to work. They made sure that they played as conservative as possible. It was going to be all Christian McCaffrey, and any pass would be headed in his direction too. They just continued to bull rush them down the field as Tom waned off the clock. And even when they did stuff him in the backfield for a 5-yard loss, with Zach Harrison continuing to make some good plays as a defender for the Falcons this season, they fucked up. J.D. Bertrand, in particular, fucked up. Big time. Because for this man, he, I think, was the linebacker that was supposed to account for Christian McCaffrey out of the backfield. So you mean to tell me that you allow him, because you're supposed to be watching him. I don't give a fuck about Mac Jones running the football. I don't care if he is scrambling around in the pocket trying to buy himself some time and being perceived as a threat to run the football. He's not gonna do anything on that front. Christian McCaffrey's more lethal out of the backfield, and you know this. You should pick him up. And instead, he continues to converge over into Mac Jones' direction, leaving Christian McCaffrey wide open, and he promptly picks up a first down conversion. Then, that offensive line just tremendously showed how powerful they are, I guess. Like, they got Christian McCaffrey right into the end zone. He was pushed back, and they helped him march right on forward into the end zone for a touchdown. Essentially put the game on ice. Falcons had a slight chance to make something happen, but again, in the same anticlimactic manner, Michael Penix Jr. threw 4 straight incomplete passes to effectively give the 49ers ball back and allow them to cap off a 20-10 win on Sunday Night Football. As for the numbers, Mac Jones completed just 65.4% of his passes for 152 yards and an interception. Again, on a night that was mainly focused on the duel between just all-around workhorse running backs, Christian McCaffrey would win this battle and run laps around Bijan Robinson as far as this iteration goes. Had a combined 31 touches for 201 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. He had his most rushing yards in a game, I think, since a certain week of regular season action in 2023. And, again, leading as both a rusher and a receiver in this game. The all-around guy. He's also the first with at least 50 receiving yards and 50 rushing yards in each of their first 7 ball games to start out the season. As for the Falcons here, Michael Penix Jr., bit of a rougher night for him. Even without an interception. That 49ers defense, again, the fact that they stepped up this tremendously and made Michael Penix Jr. feel the heat was pretty good from their side. But there were also just some misses from him that you just can't have. Like 55.3% completion, 241 yards and a touchdown. Definitely could have used a lot better there. Bijan Robinson had a combined 20 touches for 92 yards and a receiving touchdown. Darnell Mooney had 3 receptions for 68 yards. Kyle Pitts Sr. had 7 receptions for 62 yards. And Drake London had 4 receptions for 42 yards. Even with all that being said, Jesse Bates, the third in this game, had 10 tackles. J.D. Bertrand also had 4 tackles. Moving into a couple of things from the 49ers side as well. Again, Tatum Bethune, a TFL and 10 tackles for him as well in the absence of Fred Warner. Absolutely huge on his end to pull that off. Like, real steal. All right, moving on to the Bucks and the Lions on Monday Night Football. And similar case here, with the doubleheader kind of structure that they had to at least start out the season. I don't know if that's going to continue throughout the rest of the year. But I did not watch the whole of this game. I did get in at a pretty interesting point of time, though, to say the least. Now, the Lions had already had a little bit of an advantage at this point with an Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown catch to start out the game. But both teams had been relatively quiet to that point. They had a fumble mixed in here and multiple stops on defense, while themselves also recently turning the ball over on downs before undergoing a punt of their own. At that point, you had the Bucks themselves get in this position as well. And their offense generally in the first half, it was rough, bro. Like, before some madness would ensue, some crazy madness would ensue, they did not move the ball at all. At a point, they had 20 total plays for 36 yards. Yeah. It was that bad. Definitely some of the lowest marks they've had as a team. And especially for one who, even when you talk about all the different comebacks and stuff that they've had to go through, they've consistently been a good offense this year. So I was like, damn, that's pretty uncharacteristic. But the Lions, I ain't supposed to give a fuck about that. Because in came Jahmyr Gibbs, bro. This damn run was so well executed. you had Penei Sewell just completely crush a defensive lineman for this team. And I'm thinking to myself, as I'm watching this unfold, like, yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs legitimately banged his head on the fucking goalpost. As soon as he hit top speed, no Bucs defender was catching his ass. Nobody. 78 yards, and just like that, he gone. Okay? That's happening against the Bucs defensive line? A Bucs defensive line that has consistently held rushing offenses in check? That is a stark turn of events I couldn't have anticipated. But little did we know, this would just prove to be Jahmyr Gibbs' night. It would get so much better for him and just so much harder for the Bucs to even think about stopping. And offensively, again, we continued with this because Derek Barnes would get sacked that forced a 3-and-out here. For Goff, you had a Landon Roberts actually step up and make a play against him to force them into a 3-and-out. And then Baker Mayfield would get over to Sterling Shepard, who would still caught all of his targets to this point. But Meek Robertson would punch out the ball from his hands and get a fumble recovery from Aiden Hutchinson to give the Lions a very good look at doing some damage. Yet, Jake Bates, for him being a pretty reliable kicker here, yeah, it did not go so hot. They managed to miss this field goal. Like, whoa, damn. That's kind of wild. Now, it wasn't all necessarily just like ineptitude for the Bucs. You can't even really say that at all. The Lions, even with them being depleted, were actually playing solid defense. And also, in one of the earlier drives, you had Mike Evans just undergo some fucking tough shit, man. Because Baker Mayfield tries to get the pass over to him and ends up being incomplete. Like, he had the ball in his hands, and then as soon as he kind of pops back up, ball pops out, he's laid down on the ground unconscious. And so I'm thinking to myself, no, man, no. Just no. Like, the man is literally coming back from an injury already, and you mean to sit here and tell me that he's potentially got a concussion that he's dealing with? Because at that point, if you have him out like this, and I see that his helmet legitimately bounces off the ground, again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't make that diagnosis, but like, man, you'd get an idea about it. Turns out that it ended up being a shoulder injury that is set to make him miss even more time. So in the immediate aftermath and for a few games to follow, yes, they've had contributions from Emeka Egbuka and Chris Godwin Jr. and those guys. But man, Mike Evans has been the engine to that offense for so fucking long, and to not have his services is going to be rough. Although reinforcements, while Mike Evans is still out, should be on the way back because Jalen McMillan should be closer to return by this point. I would have to believe. And that's another threat that, hey, in the future they can have. Like, they are building something there, but, you still want to give those veterans their respect. Yet, none of that would matter here because, hey, Cade Otton, with the no gloves, no accessories, just bare hands, he looked as though he managed to catch this one. But both he and Arthur Merlette were fighting for the ball here. And I guess upon further review, they credited his effort. Tremendous, hell of a play from both ends. Just not giving up on it. Usually they give simultaneous possession to the wide receiver instantly. But no, they let it play on, and he was ruled to have gotten it. So the Lions would heave an even better chance at least making this a 3-possession ball game. But Jared Goff would just make a really stupid decision here. I mean, yeah, Taki Smith laid his ass out in the backfield on the first down. So let's just make that clear. He fucked him up. But it would get worse because, I guess you had Jamel Dean playing this exceptionally well. But Jared Goff, in that event, needed to throw this with a bit more air and throw it over Dean. Instead, he just threw it straight to him. And Jamel Dean was able to get a pick here, allowing the Bucks to, get a little bit of a drive going and get their first score of the night. All of a sudden, heading into the third quarter, the Bucks had a great opportunity to make this at least a one-possession ball game. And they would. Emeka Egbuka had been getting missed a few times in this game, but hey, he hit him up right there. And Tez Johnson, it became the Tez Johnson show. Not only did he get them near a first down conversion and eventually would contribute to that with Rachaad White punching it forward for a 4-yard gain, but they also gave him a great fucking screen grab. This is how you work a fucking wide receiver or an RPO screen. That's how you have to do it. Got him right on in space. There is no defender in the vicinity of him, even fast enough to touch him. And he just skated right through the defense, pulling out all the moves and everything, and he got in for a clean touchdown play. They would not get the 2-point conversion, but hey, just like that, even with their struggles, they were right back in the ball game. And then yet a good offensive drive from the Lions, punctuated by not only an elusive Jahmyr Gibbs play out of the backfield, just getting right past Dennis and damn near scoring a touchdown on this reception, if not for him running into Penei Sewell. But he then also avoided getting tackled in the backfield on a goal-to-go situation and literally spun off the defenders for a 5-yard touchdown run to give them a 21-9 lead. The majority of the rest of this game ended up being relatively quiet, as they just continued to put Baker Mayfield under duress, honestly. Good, surprisingly good, coverage on the back end amongst, again, a depleted secondary. Completely depleted. Even Rock Ya-Sin was dealing with a hamstring injury at some point in this game. It's been getting bad, the war of attrition there in Detroit, at least on that front. Maybe not to the extent that it was last season. Almost every single position on the field. And again, you'd much rather have this happen earlier and not have any potential season-ending ones than just have this onslaught of them later on in the year and not be able to get those guys back. It'd be tough for sure. The Bucs had a chance, multiple chances, in fact, to get at least in territory to strike yet again. They were stopped every time. And I respected this 4th down call because Detroit challenged this initially. Like Cade Otton, they ruled that he got a 1st down on this play. And I'm like, no, the fuck he didn't. At the moment he gets tackled, the ball is literally an inch behind the line. And not to mention that in real time, one could make the case that he didn't even catch the fucking ball in the first place. So multiple things are going on here, and that could have been a pretty helpful call for the Bucs if it stood. But upon further review, that call will be overturned, and the Lions will get the ball back. Just kicking a field goal from there. They didn't even have to move a single yard. Like, damn. Again, the same pattern would hold true here. The Lions would go 3 and out. But at that point, they'd done their damage, and Jahmyr Gibbs had certainly put in his work. While the Bucs, again, would now play desperation mode and not succeed in either case, giving the Lions a 24-9 win on Monday Night Football. Man, for the numbers, Jared Goff had 69% completion from the field for 241 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. While Jahmyr Gibbs, oh my goodness, 20 touches for 218 yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdown runs. The most scrimmage yards in a single game for a Detroit Lion player since none other than Calvin Johnson in his 2013 season, in which he set the all-time single-season record for receiving yards in a year. Madness, man. Absolutely wild stuff. They had no answer for him. Truly, none. Because for a person that is branded as a fast guy, and deservedly so, and he's got a good amount of punch to him as well. And when he can put both on display like that, at that level, man, it's going to be hard for any person to slow him down at that point. Amon-Ra St. Brown also had 6 receptions for 86 yards and a touchdown catch. As for the Bucs, Baker Mayfield completed just 56% of his passes on 50 attempts for 228 yards and a touchdown and an interception. And again, while Baker Mayfield has played exceptionally well this year, in a game like this, it's alarming that he threw the ball that much. But again, the Lions made it a point to prevent the Bucs from imposing their will on the ground. Held them to just 41 yards as a team and 3.4 yards per carry. Cade Otton had 7 receptions for 65 yards. Emeka Egbuka had 4 receptions for 58 yards. And Ted Johnson also had the same output with the aforementioned touchdown catch and the only one of their night. Do give major respect, though, to Dennis for getting a tackle for loss and 12 tackles, with Taki Smith also getting 13 tackles, a sack, and 2 TFLs on the night. As a blitzing D-back, he is quickly ascending into a legitimate threat. Like, they've done that for him so much, and they've found some decent success with it. Just a really interesting point to make there. All right. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. All right. Moving on into the Rams-Jags game in London. Yet another situation for completely different reasons where a question legitimately has to be asked by a person who went to this game. Why? Why waste their time waking up early in the morning or going out in the heat of the day to watch this shit unfold? The Jags, who again, with all the shit that goes on with their owner, have an appeal in London. And you brought them there to get beat down completely by Los Angeles. That defense suffocated the living shit out of Trevor Lawrence in that unit. Aside from the very first 100-yard game in Travis Hunter's career and also his very first NFL scorer. And yet that still came by the time it was the fourth quarter and they were already down 28-0 to open it. That Rams offense also made the Jags look like mincemeat defensively for a team that has also been viewed as one of the best defenses in the NFL up to this point in time. Matthew Stafford didn't even have to find himself getting the craziest amount of yardage in this game for him to still torch you as a quarterback. Turning back the clock completely in that regard. And Devontae Adams had a fucking hat trick, just mossing, like having his fucking choice to pick on any one defender at any one point in time. Got multiple mosses of people in the end zone. Like, it was just too easy of a win for Los Angeles. And that's got to be the most embarrassing part about this. Like, for Trevor Lawrence, again, in a game like this, I'm talking about that shit with Baker Mayfield for his ass, Trevor Lawrence, to be throwing the ball 48 times and completing just 47.9% of your passes. I don't even give a fuck about the yardage. It was all garbage time at that point. You didn't do enough of that when it mattered the most. And maybe it would have been a lot more competitive if you had. Now, again, the Jags are going to live and die by the run. And they did run relatively well. But again, once you're getting beaten into submission like that, you're going to start getting desperate. The most potential you would have in terms of being able to get chunk plays down the field is going to come through the pass. So naturally, that is what you're going to do. Meanwhile, Matthew Stafford was just back there, calm, cool, and collected for fucking 63.6% completion from the field, 182 yards and 5 touchdown passes. 5 of them. Absolutely embarrassing. 5 receptions in 35 yards and 3 touchdown catches for Davante Adams in this game. No Puka Nakua, absolutely no problem. Wide receivers didn't even need to do much of anything. That's just how automatic it was. And it was also so damn good that there was still room for a couple rookies to get involved. Is Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon would manage to get a 31-yard touchdown catch, while also to start off the game in what I saw in post, Kenana Mumpfield, the rookie out of Pitt, would get a 5-yard touchdown catch. Again, like I said, if anything, you get a Travis Hunter 100-yard game out of this. 8 receptions for 101 yards for him and a touchdown. But again, just so incredibly fake, bro. Like, oh my gosh. Oh man. Okay. Moving on to the Saints and Bears. Interesting dynamic here. Spencer Rattler was trying to get his get back over the man that took his job at Oklahoma. In reality, quarterback play wasn't the strongest from either side. And it was more so Caleb Williams just not being worse. 57.7% completion from the field and 172 yards with a pick ain't really going to do enough to win games. But you just happen to be playing against the Saints. They're just going to find a way to be consistently bad. Not only did you have them fail to establish any sort of rushing attack whatsoever by being held to just 2.6 yards per carry on 44 yards, while the Bears vaulted by a major day from DeAndre Swift with 19 rushes for 124 yards and a touchdown, and also Kyle Mungai, the rookie, getting 13 rushes for 81 yards and a touchdown, had a combined 222 yards as a team on 5.6 yards per carry into touchdown runs. That was the first major blow here. But also, when you look at that, you're controlling the line of scrimmage there, and you're also protecting the football. And by comparison, Spencer Rattler was much worse in that regard. Yes, he had 62.5% completion and 233 yards for 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 3 picks by himself, bro. And he also lost a fumble in this game. Now again, as I honestly should have probably made even greater light of when focusing on the component of the Seahawks-Texans game, but you get the idea. Typically, when you win the turnover battle 4-1, your team is likely going to win the ball game. And the Bears can say that they did. The Texans, in the weirdest fashion imaginable, could not get it done. So do with that what you will. But hey, the Bears, again, either way, they're stringing together wins now. I don't know how long that's going to last because they are running into a Ravens team that does potentially get Lamar Jackson back next week. And they're going to be motivated to try to go out there and win as much as they can. They are not going to be playing games with you. Yes, their defense is very much suspect, but play those games with them if you want. See what happens. For the Saints, though, Chris Olave had 5 receptions for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Juwan Johnson had 5 receptions for 79 yards. All right, let's see. Moving on to Panthers, Jets, bro. Enough is enough, bro. Enough is enough, man. Like, yo, again, before the game, as I already alluded to, as a recap, okay, I'm getting notifications about fucking Justin Fields and his starting job being in question. And I'm like, yo, there's no way that that's possible. Well, that decision would be made pretty clear at halftime. Because the very first sign of just a clear lack of trust in him would be shown with him literally getting benched at halftime. Now, again, by that point, yeah, it was just completely terrible for the Jets. Just the same old shit again and again and again. It's been the theme of their entire season. Literally, go and look at what I've said about some of their other games. Honestly, outside of the Bucks and Jets one, and even them, it fucking took them some astronomically crazy plays to get back into that one. But aside from that shit, they don't have it at all. They don't have it at all, bro. And yes, Garrett Wilson being out truly hurts at this point. But damn. Like, they legitimately can't move the ball. They cannot throw the ball. It's like, oh my goodness, that's got to be some of the most excruciating shit to have to watch as a Jets fan. Like, in comes Tyrod Taylor, and while he does get a field goal for them, he doesn't do much better himself, throwing 2 picks and completing just 45.5% of his passes for 126 yards. And they dropped to 0-7 as a result of this shit, man. Like I said, the same old shit every single week for this fucking team. It's to think that Bryce Young didn't even play that much better. You know, he managed the game. He did all he needed to do to not lose them this one. Completing 60% of his passes for 138 yards and a touchdown. While Xavier Legette had a career high in yards and receptions with 9 receptions and 92 yards and a touchdown. You also, if you're the Jets, like, yeah, you were outgained on the ground rather, but it's not like Rico O'Donnell had one of these crazy games like he's been having over the past couple weeks either. You had chances. Your defense had been starting to show up again. And your offense still couldn't wake the fuck up out of the bed in the morning, man. It's like, come on, like, what is it going to take? Then I'm getting some other shit coming through here, talking about the fact that Justin Fields was apparently not aware of whether or not he or Tyrod Taylor was going to start in the fucking game. I'm like, yo, what are you, like, bro, come on, dude. Come on, bro. We've got to get this shit together, man, because the more and more that these New York fans have to take this shit from you, it ain't going to be a fun time. Like, you know how the media in New York gets with their damn sports. It's already toxic down there. I could tell. It's probably going to get way, way, way worse if they don't get this shit figured out. I'm telling you, bro. Moving on to the Patriots and Titans. It was actually somewhat close. And the Titans actually had a tremendous chance to win following a touchdown catch from Jahmyr Gibbs from 38 yards out. But after that, it was all Pats. It was all Pats. And ironically enough, with a guy like Harold Landry III now being on that defense and completely wrecking the game on the other side of the ball. Multiple new additions would make great plays for the team. I think they mentioned that Kayvon Chason had a fumble return for touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. Like, they were just, they just completely 180'd the game after that specific play right there. It looked to be a promising start from Cam Ward, but it was not enough. And Drake May and this Pats team continue to keep it rolling. I mean, for one, what I will say before talking about Drake May is that it appeared to be a much better day for Ramondre Stevenson. Again, this game wasn't live, but 18 rushes for 88 yards and a touchdown run. Definitely some of the better numbers he's had in quite a long time. Especially if he can protect the damn football. But they still need to give Travion Henderson more of a chance. As for Drake May, he had 62 rushing yards on the ground, but also had 222 yards passing, 2 touchdown passes, and get ready for this. Because, the Patriots have had some good quarterbacks in their history. From Drew Bledsoe, obviously, gone into Tom Brady, right? Patriots franchise record 91.3% completion in the game. And yet somehow, even with that being the case, even with him having as many incompletions as touchdown passes, that didn't grant him a perfect quarterback rating. It gets incredibly weird on this side. But, yes, Drake May, this stuff has got to be studied. He is legitimately playing his ass off this season. Legitimately. Don't look now. The Patriots are 5-2. I think they have control of the AFC East. Wow. Who would have thought that? But again, when you are having him get this kind of quarterback play in, if the rushing game can become a little more consistent, and if that defense keeps doing what it's doing with the amount of additions that they've had in the offseason, it's not hard to see why they're here. Stephon Diggs had 7 receptions for 69 yards. Kayshon Boutte had 2 receptions for 55 yards and a touchdown. Matt Hollins had 2 receptions for 49 yards. Austin Hooper also had a touchdown catch in this one as well. As for Cam Ward, not a bad game by him, but just more lackluster offensive production in general. And again, like I said, even with him having 255 yards passing on 73.5% completion, a touchdown, and an interception, it's okay at best. But again, what do you expect him to do if you can't open the game up for the rookie quarterback by establishing at least some semblance of a competent run game? They had just 3.2 yards per carry on 39 yards on 12 of them. And you expect a defense to be fooled by what it is the Titans are trying to do? Are you serious right now? Jahmyr Gibbs had 4 receptions for 70 yards and the aforementioned touchdown. Sonny Pollard had 6 receptions for 43 yards. Van Jefferson had 4 receptions for 41 yards. And Gunnar Helm had 4 receptions for 36 yards as well. Huh. All right. Okay. Dolphins, Browns. Respect, first and foremost, to Quinshon motherfucking Judkins, by the way. Ohio State man toting the hell out of the rock, getting 84 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground by himself, spurring the Browns to victory in that regard on the offensive side. And it's a sound game from Dillon Gabriel as well. Again, similar case, you have him managing the game. You know, he's just making the right decision at the right time, not doing enough to lose you the game, and just being a part of some good, hard team winning. And while that worked effectively for the Browns, this is such a fucking slap in the face to Miami. And it just makes it so much more desirable for them to potentially fire Mike McDaniel. Like, is this all on him? Maybe not necessarily, but like, this is just some bullshit. And again, even if they were to fire Mike McDaniel, this game specifically was not a Mike McDaniel thing. This man, Tua Tagovailoa, threw 3 picks and led a performance in which Dillon Gabriel only barely crossed 100 passing yards and threw just 18 passes. That is cause to say that Dillon Gabriel outplayed a man in Tua Tagovailoa who is commanding one of the highest overall quarterback contracts in the NFL right now. Think about that shit. Like, you can't make that shit up. You just string along paltry offensive production in the first half, and then you throw 3 separate interceptions in the second half alone. You made Tyson Campbell look like a good fucking cornerback because you decided for once again in this damn season to throw it to Davon Achane like he's fucking 6'5". The man is 5'8". And you expect that man to come out of the backfield as a receiver and leap up for a fucking short route? No wonder it promptly got tipped up and fell right into that motherfucker's hands. For him to just easily get in for a pick 6 from there. And then you have back-to-back drives ending in interceptions. It got so bad to where even the CBS, I guess one of the members of the crew who handles scoring updates, they had to account for that. The fact that Quinshon Judkins barrels in for yet another touchdown following the initial Tua Tagovailoa interception thrown to Rayshawn Jenkins. Just an absolutely horrible throw. And then right as it's happening, you have the Ohio State man in Ronnie Hickman making a play. But why the fuck are you throwing it in that direction if you're doing Tagovailoa? Like, what are you thinking about, man? And they promptly benched him for Quinn Ewers. Now, again, that's not going to be long term. You have too much money wrapped up in this man to bench him for Quinn Ewers right now. You can't afford to do that. But for the man to finish with just 52.2% completion, 100 yards on the dot, and a 24.1 QBR. The week and a few days after you go through that whole cycle of calling out the fucking team for what they are or are not doing as players on the roster, then walking back those comments, and then you come out and you have a performance like this, you are losing every bit of credibility, every little shred of it that you may still have after this point, in that locker room once you go out there and have those actions being followed up on this shitty-ass performance right here? What the hell? You can't go out and call out somebody like that. Because now they have a defense. They have leverage on you to come after your performance over the past few ball games. Like, the man, wild stat, is the first Dolphins quarterback to throw 3 interceptions in back-to-back weeks since Dan Marino. Now again, Dan Marino, obviously tremendous quarterback in all-time Dolphins history. But that ain't the side of history you want to be on a part of. And it's actively, this one was largely responsible for the loss. You can't work your way around that one. It also could have been worse. I'm looking down here, I see that this man has 3 fucking fumbles in the game as well. Now, luckily he didn't lose any, but come on, man. Like, it's looking scary because you don't have much margin for error anymore. And it's clear that the AFC East, honestly, it could be a 2-man race between the Pats and the Bills at this point. Because between the Jets and the Dolphins, no. Even with the Dolphins beating them head to head, that don't mean shit. That didn't mean a damn thing. It just temporarily spared you from being seen as a winless team. And even then, that came with its own set of other just craziness in losing Tyreek Hill. I get that. But damn. Having just him be out has that kind of effect on how you're performing as a ball club. And again, in a similar way, yes, the comments that Tyreek Hill had at the end of the season last year did not help, but if he's out and y'all are still having this issue, was he ever really the problem in the first place? Was he? Moving on to the Giants and Broncos. This is just so tough if you're a Giants fan. But again, all the New Yorkers are going through it. I understand. You hold a 19-0 lead against a pretty damn good Broncos defense. Relatively mistake-free. Jackson Dart just commanding the offense relatively well. Cam Scatterboo keeping the action going. And Theo Johnson actually managing to get a good connection in with him once more. Tyrone Dracy Jr. in this case had a 31-yard touchdown run to give him that lead as well. Like, everybody was definitely pitching in their own part to help the Giants get here. And the defense, for a Broncos team that has, I don't know what to say. Because you go from doing that shit in London last week with Nate Atkins scoring the only touchdown in the game to then having this explosive-ass fourth quarter of absolute destiny right here. I think there was a stat that essentially mentioned that teams who were up by 10 or more points with around 6 or so minutes left in the fourth quarter were 0 in 1,300 something. And that would change for a collective number of reasons. What the hell was the Giants defense on in this time? What the hell were they on? What changed? You were doing everything so well, and it is when you would be trying to put the game away as a team that you then start to allow them to creep back into this thing. Had J.K. Dobbins toting the hell out of the rock. You have Bo Nix hitting up Troy Franklin. He himself was getting active on the ground as well. One of the last touchdowns saw him take a fucking power play with a fucking stutter step in open space and just skip her for a fucking 21-yard touchdown run to give him the lead at that point. What the hell was going on? And it's like in situations like that, yes, the defense was tremendously bad at this point. Also ended up ringing true at the end of the game when all you needed at this point, because you had taken the lead back, you knew you couldn't let them get in field goal range, and yet in a matter of a couple plays, you allow Marvin Mims Jr.'s short ass to get one over the middle on you, and then you allow Cortland Sutton to moss you over the sideline with Deonte Banks just playing this absolutely lazily. Like, how? Why? What the hell is wrong with you? The fuck is wrong with you? Like, there's no reason to give up that stuff like that. And ultimately, the defense got exactly what they deserved in this one. I mean, yes, Brian Burns is definitely mad about the loss, but man, like at some point, y'all had to hold up y'all end of the bargain. At that point, the offense was still doing okay. Maybe they slowed down a bit, but damn. They wouldn't be feeling the heat if you had continued to keep your foot on the gas pedal as a unit. I mean, they still had gotten a touchdown to Theo Johnson on a wild play here. Like this damn Troy Franklin catch, for instance, there's a lot of luck that goes into it. The ball literally bounced out of Cortland Sutton and off a deflection from one of the other defenders and into the hands of a falling Troy Franklin in the corner of the end zone. But hey, it canceled out immediately when you have the ball also deflect off of Wan'Dale Robinson and out of his hands into Theo Johnson on essentially a hook and ladder pseudo play right here, and he just bowls his way into the end zone for a 41-yard touchdown catch. Like, the offense is still doing their thing. But, as always, when you get into situations like this, when you have these kinds of comebacks, man, there's always so much more that goes into it. The crucial turnover from Jackson Dart would not help matters. Through the interception, he was facing a little pressure, but he threw it right to Sternin. And from there, they got right in the red zone, and it took them less than a minute to respond. And I'm like, at that point, seeing that, okay, all of a sudden, hey, the Broncos are talking about something. And then the touchdown run from Bo Nix followed. I mean, hey, you do have to credit Jackson Dart for this, though. Even with that, he still responded. Now, yes, they got a few penalties to go their way. But before you knew it, they were in go-to-go territory, and Jackson Dart got right up the middle, went low, and muscled in a touchdown run, extending his arm right over the goal line. They had to challenge it, but he was clear over it at that point, so they gave it to him. Like, for you to be a rookie and potentially have that lead in the first place is honestly pretty damn good. Now, yes, you can't lose him in the situation, but he still damn near almost came back and won the whole thing. And granted, they could have as well. This game could have been extended because Will Lutz would eventually make what was the game-winning field goal at the end of this. But it all goes back to one other crucial component of this thing first. There's probably going to be one particular name that is going to haunt Giants fans for a little bit because, I mean, at that point, they left points on the board because they were trying to get around the inconsistency from this man. Jude McAtamney. I didn't know that's how you would say it, but I did just find out through a simple search that the man is a former Gerlich football player and from Ireland. I do remember him playing for Rutgers. They did mention that. And I'm like, okay. Initially, when they did sign him, I'm like, okay, who the fuck is this? Then I had to recalibrate. What the fuck was that performance from Makatane in this one? In what ended up being a 1-point loss. A failed 2-point conversion and 2 missed extra points. Would have made this a completely different ballgame. Again, yeah, coulda, woulda, shoulda, right? They had a chance to simply force the Broncos into tying to take it into overtime or scoring a touchdown to get the win. And yet you give them the easiest possible scenario. But just, again, like, that is not stuff that can happen. And I think that Makatane wouldn't know it. He certainly heard it at this point. But, man, when you look at it, all the madness that went into it, you have to take all of those things into account. Jackson Dart, bit of a weird one, 45.5% completion. He did have 283 passing yards and 3 touchdowns along with the interception. And a touchdown run as well. You'd love to see that accuracy go up. And he's had those situations at Ole Miss, believe me, I know. But yeah, he is going to continue figuring out. And again, there's a lot of promise that comes with this game. But again, that turnover is definitely something he's going to hang on to for a while. Cam Scatterbull had a combined 19 touches for 94 yards and a touchdown catch. Wan'Dale Robinson had 6 receptions for 95 yards. Daniel Bellinger had 3 receptions for 88 yards, including a 44-yard touchdown catch to open up the game. Like, literally, nobody was on the man. And then Theo Johnson had 3 receptions for 66 yards in this game as well. Dane Belton also had 10 tackles, interestingly enough. As for the Broncos, Bo Nix should never be throwing 50 pass attempts in a game. He did complete 54% of those passes for 279 yards and 2 touchdown passes, while also having 2 touchdown runs on the ground with 48 yards on 5 carries. Becoming the first player in NFL history to have 2 passing and 2 rushing touchdowns in a single quarter. And do you know how crazy that shit sounds? Because yes, the Giants might have slowed down a little bit, but for you to be on the ropes as the Denver defense and completely nullify them for that long, to where you give your offense that much time in a single quarter's worth of work to respond mightily. I mean, hey, what more can you say about their effort in the second half of this one, where they could have easily just allowed the Giants to take this thing over? They stayed in the fight, and they got some pretty good breakups. Obviously, the crucial turnover. It just all came to a head for them at that point. Craziness, man. J.K. Dobbins had 14 rushes for 81 yards. Cortland Sutton had 6 receptions for 87 yards. Marvin Mims Jr. had 6 receptions for 85 yards. And Evan Engram had 5 receptions for 42 yards. Absolutely a crazy game. I don't know if one would call that a game of the year candidate, but hell, I mean, damn, it got that close down the stretch. Maybe you could. The Colts and the Chargers next. Don't be fooled by the final score. Don't be fooled by this 38-24 outcome, because the Colts dominated this shit the entire way. Yeah, the Chargers tried to chip back a little bit, but that ugly first half from Justin Herbert and just the Colts right out of the gates getting active as an offense. That was the ultimate separator. By that point, the Chargers, even though they got some points on the board, they were already out of it now. Daniel Jones had 67.6% completion for 288 yards and 2 touchdown passes without a turnover once again. Just consistent, solid play from him. It's crazy to see that this is happening. Alec Pierce had 5 receptions for 98 yards. Tyler Warren had 4 receptions for 69 yards and a touchdown catch. And Michael Pittman Jr. had 7 receptions for 58 yards and a touchdown catch as well. They also could not stop Jonathan Taylor. Who can? Who can? The man, I think, is still leading the NFL in rushing yards at this point, and he's also just finding the end zone consistently. 19 total touches for him and 132 total yards with 3 touchdown runs on the ground. And again, these touchdown runs are not all just like short yardage runs into the end zone. No, he's legitimately bursting past entire defenses and skating freely into daylight. They cannot get a hold of him this season, man. But I've been saying, man, once he can actually get his health in order, he is truly one of the better running backs in the NFL. And I think that is consistently being proven right now. Justin Herbert in this game would have 420 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Their rushing game was nothing much to speak of. But I do very much like this part of the game for the Chargers. Yo, how about Oronde Gadsden II, the rookie out of Syracuse, going off for 7 receptions and 164 yards with a touchdown catch? Now again, could that be a little bit inflated because of the fact that it might have been garbage time? Maybe. But the fact that they're involving him in this offense a little more is something that I was kind of questioning whether or not they would do once they drafted him. I figured they were getting a pretty good steal here on him because he was definitely a good prospect coming out of Syracuse. And, I mean, what do you know? It looks like, to me, from an outsider looking in, not a Chargers fan, they're starting to phase him in this offense a little more. And, even though the Colts defense is just a tough unit to face off against, I mean, hey, he shredded them single-handedly. So he deserves a tremendous amount of credit for that. I think that's also his first 100-yard game, no? Let me see. Yeah, first 100-yard game. And first 150-yard game, even, if we want to take it further. He wouldn't be the only one, as Keenan Allen would have 11 receptions for 119 yards and a touchdown as well. Just continuing to do work even in his age, man. Ladd McConkey would have 9 receptions for 67 yards, and also Quentin Johnston would have 2 receptions for 30 yards. Okay. All right. And moving on to the Packers and the Cardinals. Why the fuck was this game close? I don't know. Kyler Murray was out yet again, and they started Jacoby Brissett for this one. He did honestly fine, but there was one small problem with that. He was consistently touching the ground because Micah Parsons would have his best day, his finest day with the team. 3 sacks for him and 4 TFLs. That's what they paid the man the big bucks for. Arizona had a lead for a while. They even took like a 13-3 lead nearing the end of the half following a Jacoby Brissett touchdown pass to Trey McBride, who would then later in the game catch another one because he's been a consistent weapon for like that. That makes tremendous sense. That lines up with a lot of what we've seen from the team. But hey, the Packers, they weren't going away. You know, that defense would definitely show up when they needed to, and Rashawn Gary forcing a sack fumble here would eventually lead to a Josh Jacobs touchdown run. They took it back, but in that fourth quarter, the Packers hunkered down. They did what they needed to do. Tucker Kraft will get a touchdown, and Josh Jacobs would also do what he does best in short yardage and get one of his own. Eventually give the Packers the 27-23 lead and win. By the end of the game, Jordan Love had 179 passing yards on 65.5% completion with a touchdown pass, while Josh Jacobs had 13 rushes for 55 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. Romeo Doubs had 6 receptions for 72 yards, and Tucker Kraft had 5 receptions for 58 yards and a touchdown. As for the Cardinals, though, not a bad game by Jacoby Brissett at all. 69.4% completion, 279 yards, and 2 touchdown passes. Trey McBride had 10 receptions for 74 yards and 2 touchdowns. Zay Jones had 2 receptions for 67 yards, and Marvin Harrison Jr. had 2 receptions for 58 yards. The disrespect, by the way. Yes, Jacoby Brissett, with his archetype, he's definitely going to be looking to involve the tight ends and running backs in the offense a little more. But damn, you got those weapons on the outside, and you gonna misutilize Marvin Harrison Jr. like that? Are you fucking crazy, bro? Anyways. Alright. That'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this portion of the video. And I will see you guys in the next one, where I'll be handling the developments. And man, we got some pretty weird ones to get to. Peace.